the 79th observance, 79 years ago. And we've been starting every hour with the program of this program today as we talk about every year, because I think this was, as I said, one of the brightest moments of human history. Just the selflessness, the sacrifice, the stories. And I've been sharing with you some stories because I'm a huge World War II buff. And we have a long family history, big family history in World War II. And I think that we have to learn from what happened, see what the greatest generation did, and apply it to how we can make things better today. So welcome to the second hour, top of the second hour. Your lovable curmudgeon, Dana Lash, here with you. 79 years ago. Now, at this time, my husband's grandfather was in Normandy. My grandfather was on the USS Alabama in the Pacific, completely on opposite sides of the world from each other. One was fighting to help liberate France and was what they called a dog-face soldier. He ended up getting wounded, and he woke up in what he thought was a German POW camp because a German nurse who had been captured by Allied forces was tending to him, and he damn near lost his mind. And then he realized he was okay. But my grandfather was on USS Alabama all the way in the Pacific, so he was out there at sea when everything was happening, and just amazing, where members of your family were. I think every American family had somebody. And this almost didn't happen. One of my favorite stories from World War II is a story about a unit that most people don't know about. And this unit that most people do not know about helped contribute and were absolutely just required for the success of D-Day. For the Germans to believe that the Allied forces weren't going to go where they were supposed to go, or weren't going to go where they actually were going. They had to make them believe a different narrative. It was the Deception Unit, aka the Ghost Army. And this is one of the craziest and most amazing stories of World War II. It is a time when you had people from Hollywood, you had people who worked in film, and in radio, and on stage, and in fashion, and in costumes, and everyone was working together. Hollywood was working together with, you had people from Hollywood who were working with families who had sent their sons from their farms in Middle America to go and help liberate Europe and stop the Nazi spread. Everyone worked together, shoulder to shoulder. I don't know of any other time in history where this has happened. No one had any agenda except to beat the Nazis. They were activated on January 20th, 1944. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a deception unit, tactical deception unit, and the first in U.S. Army history, called the Ghost Army. 82 officers, 1,023 men under the command of Army veteran Colonel Harry Reeder. It was a top secret unit. And they were capable of simulating 2 entire divisions, 30,000 men. They made the Nazis think that they were 30,000 men. They used visual, they used radio, sonic, everything to fool German forces in the final year of World War II. I can't emphasize the importance of their role in pulling off D-Day enough. There's an exhibit there at the National World War II Museum. They had an exhibit out called The Ghost Army, the Combat Con Artist of World War II. There's also a really great documentary about this, and there are a couple of really good books about this. I have one of them, and I'll put that in a separate email that I'll send out to you subscribers later. They use things like inflatable tanks. You got to see some of these pictures from the sky. And even from away, maybe in a tree line, they look real if you're not, but right up close, but this was their skill set. This is what gets me. They didn't have anything heavier than 50 cal. They went out there and they did this. They didn't have anything heavier than 50 cal. And they took part in 22 large-scale deceptions in Europe from Normandy to the Rhine River. And the bulk of the unit arrived in England in May of 1944, right before D-Day. And they had very carefully selected artists, engineers, some soldiers, some draftees, and then you know who else they had? They had famous people. You guys remember Bill Blass? I was asking Kane this. You know, the guy, I just remember in the 90s, there was Bill Blass clothing, and he was in the Ghost Army. Ellsworth Kelly was in the Ghost Army. A photographer, Art Kane, was in the Ghost Army. They had a lot of people from West Point and former Army Specialized Training Program participants. They were all assigned to this 23rd unit. They said this unit had one of the highest IQs in the entire Army with an average of 119. They faked radio traffic. They faked sound effects. They even had made-up generals. The Germans bought every bit of it. They used all of their skills, their talent to create these illusions, and they saved thousands of lives. They were sworn to secrecy. They couldn't tell their families. They couldn't tell their wives. And everything was classified. And there, not until 1985, a piece in the Smithsonian, because there was not a single peep about the Ghost Army. There was one newspaper article, like right after, according to the National World War II Museum. There was one newspaper article right after, but that was kind of it. And nothing was said about this until 1985 from a Smithsonian article, because it was classified still officially all the way up until the 90s. They literally created theater across Europe to manipulate Hitler into taking his armies in different places, to making them think that they were going somewhere where they actually weren't going. And they were finally only recently given a Congressional Gold Medal. I mean, they had artillery that couldn't fire. Their tanks couldn't move, and they were able. It was called a traveling road show. They went up and down the front lines impersonating real people. They were at Battle of the Bulge. They had 20 missions throughout from 1944 to 1945, and they were a major. It was a major success. They said they were inspired by British subterfuge in North Africa, so they created the Ghost Army. Is this not amazing? They would have military drills on speakers that they buried and they hid, and you could hear them 50 miles away, and they would blare pre-recorded sounds, and they would trick off. I mean, it was the stuff that they did is amazing. Absolutely amazing. They created, they had a 17-man platoon that was on Omaha Beach. 4 members joined D-Day at Normandy. 17-man platoon came ashore at Omaha. 8 days later, they made dummy artillery placements, and they drew tons of fire from the Germans. Large-scale deceptions. They had 50 dummy tanks. They had sound trucks to mimic the sound of the tanks. They had them convinced. They deceived the Germans about where Patton's Third Army was. It is amazing what they did. I mean, you've got to read about it. There's a really good book called The Ghost Army of World War II by Rick Beyer, and it's great. And he also worked on a documentary about it. That's the book I have. I highly suggest that you get it. It's fantastic. It's such an amazing part of history. But that's when everyone worked together. The farmer who went to war, the sound director from Hollywood, the stage designer from New York. That was unity. That was everyone coming together to fight a common enemy. Do you think they agreed with each other on everything? Do you think that it mattered at that time in that place? No. That's why they're the greatest generation.